Hello and welcome to Hersley. I'm John McNamara and I'm here today with Leif Davidsen. Hello Leif, how are you?
Hello John, I'm very well, thank you.
Awesome, buddy. So this is the second hangout around the topic of what is messaging. And our very first one, we gave a high-level overview of what is messaging, but this time we're going to dig down a little bit deeper and we look at some of the particular aspects of messaging, what you need to understand if you're going to implement it. Now, this is a live hangout, so if you want to tweet us any questions, please feel free to use the hashtag ibmmessaging, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we possibly can. So, okay, so let's first of all introduce Leif. And Leif, can you tell us what you do here at IBM?
Well, clearly as little as possible, John.
Legend.
No, I'm the senior product manager for the IBM messaging portfolio. So work with both talking to customers and also talking with developers, making sure that we have the right plan for future releases going ahead, as well as making sure that everybody understands the value of the product portfolio that we have today.
Cool. So you're really on a kind of a prime position then to be able to answer a number of questions around messaging. And you did a sterling job in the very first. We give a high-level overview. I think now if we dig a wee bit deeper, so if I'm going to implement messaging, what are the salient aspects that I need to be aware of before I start?
Well, it very much depends who you are. I think we talked in the last hangout about some of the illities that maybe was important if you're going to implement messaging. But depending on whether you're an application developer or an architect, or maybe the infrastructure team in charge of enterprise IT, which of those illities that actually is important to you, and how messaging actually implements those and delivers value to you is going to be very different depending on who you are.
Fair enough. All right. So let's say I'm a developer, an application, I want to use messaging. What aspects do I as a developer need to consider for my app?
Oh, that's a good place to start. Again, last time I think we talked about one of the benefits of messaging itself is making the application itself simpler.
Right.
Now, if we focus on what are the specific benefits that messaging provides, some of those illities: transactionality, robustness, security, reliability, recoverability, manageability. Some of those are actually more of interest to you than others. Really, from a developer point of view, maybe manageability of messaging isn't necessarily top of mind,
right? But
maybe something like transactionality might be.
Yeah.
If you're a developer, and it's not too much of a stretch to think of you as a developer.
You're very kind.
One of the things you'll be doing might be to make updates to maybe some enterprise database, or make an update to some data that's held by an application that's under transactional control. I mean, typically that's reserving an airline seat, or buying some stock, or moving money from one account to another. It's the sort of thing that has to happen under transactional control. Now, you can use an application environment that assists you, but if you think about what that's doing in terms of a multi-system environment that's maybe using messaging,
right,
you have to be aware that the messaging environment itself is participating in that transaction.
Okay, all right.
Because if you're not aware of that, if you don't know that messaging can actually coordinate that update, and that update's happening elsewhere, then you as an application programmer may need to be able to compensate for any failures that might happen. Whereas if you can rely on the messaging system from a transactional point of view, yes, that's one job off your plate. As I'm sure you're always looking to save effort.
Yeah, so I guess if you've got a number of things that need to be lined up for that entire transaction to be successfully completed, you need to understand and know if one of those things haven't taken place, and be able to roll back that transaction, figure out what's happened, and then make sure it can happen again with everything taking place you need to for that successful transaction to take place.
Absolutely. And the scenario you described, we talked about the three maybe personalities that will be interested. And you can see from a developer point of view, thinking about that end-to-end transaction flow, they'll have one view of what's happening.
Yeah.
But an architect's view of the transaction flow may be that step backwards, looking at that entire flow, whereas a developer might have a focus on only one part of that flow.
Yeah, good point.
And so you can see how the importance of messaging and the importance of capabilities of messaging is going to be different depending on who you are.
Cool.
So transactionality, certainly, if you're looking at enterprise messaging, so enterprise messaging that's really interacting with enterprise level applications, dealing with critical business data, critical transactions, updating, key parts of your enterprise, then you need to look for a messaging provider that includes transactionality as one of those core features, because otherwise, from a developer point of view, you've got a lot more work to do.
Yes, true enough. So as a developer, would I be interested in things like the persistence of messaging versus non-persistence?
Well, again, I mean, if we step back from transactions and just think about, okay, I'm a developer and I'm moving data. It might not necessarily be updating transaction data, but it's still saying, actually, I've got a key piece of data that I want to distribute to another application or applications elsewhere. But you know what? One of the things that's important to me as a developer is I'm trying to eliminate rework, and I'm trying to eliminate putting in complexity in my program. And what I want to do is make sure that if I'm moving data, then I know it's moved, and I don't need to say, well, I'm going to check to see whether that has moved, but I don't want to move it twice. I don't want to say, okay, here's an update. Oh, here's another update of the same thing, because it might confuse the receiving system.
Yeah.
I want to move that data once and once only, what we call assured delivery. And that means that that data has to be delivered even if there's a failure of an intervening system. And that's where persistent messaging comes in. So that means I'm moving data as a message through a messaging queue. But it's the queuing mechanism that actually says, okay, now the messaging system has it. It has it persisted in a queue. And that if there is a failure, then the messaging system itself says, no, I've got this.
Right.
You as a developer don't need to worry about this. You gave it to me. You've entrusted it with me as the messaging system. I'm looking after the delivery of this. So as a developer, persistence of messaging means that as a developer, once I've handed that off to the messaging system, if I've said this is data that I only want to send once and once only, therefore make sure that you handle any failures, then a persistent message means my job's done. I've handed it to the messaging system.
I guess you haven't got to code in that complexity into your application, handle all that. That's done under the covers for you via messaging itself.
Yeah, I mean, as an application developer, you want to focus on the value that you're bringing to the business when you're coding your application. You're maybe trying to implement a new piece of business logic, deliver a new asset to your customers or to your business users. That's where you want to focus your effort. You don't want to be trying to second guess all the different failure modes and say, I wonder what happens in this scenario. I better code. Your time will be consumed by failure modes and not by the business logic.
Yeah.
By saying, no, all I need to do is give my message to the messaging system. The messaging system persists that and deliver that when every participant is available at some point. Then I can get on with my job or make myself a copy.
Yeah. So I guess we've got persistence down, which that sounds fantastic. Transactionality. As a developer, am I going to be interested in things like security and making that as easy as possible for me to incorporate SSL and TLS, that kind of good stuff?
Well, to some extent, yes. Obviously, as we've talked about, there are other people who may have different views of some of these capabilities. But from a developer point of view, you'll certainly need to consider some aspects of security. you may be tasked at it from a different level from the architect or from the infrastructure team, but you'll probably have some hoops to jump through in terms of saying, okay, is this secure? Can it exploit, SSL, maybe TLS, or maybe it's more of a, don't bother me about the actual implementation, just assure me that the data is actually encrypted from my application to the other application. Now, if you are a developer and trying to meet that goal, okay, I've got to send this data to somebody else. How do I actually make sure that that data is delivered there without any prying eyes, without anybody modifying it?
Yeah,
I've got a lot of work on my hands. Again, the benefit of a messaging system is you just go, no, messaging system can take care of security, or should be able to take care of security, assuming it's got the right set of features. So in other words, can the messaging system actually encrypt this while it's flowing from one application to another? Can it encrypt it at all points? Can it make sure that it's kept it encrypted and make sure it's not modified? And also, can it make sure that the application that's sending it and the application that's receiving it are authenticated and authorized to use it, so it's not just anybody can start up an application and send a message and pretend it's the same thing. So
awesome.
So there's some aspects that do impact the developer. There's possibly, from a security point of view, more aspects that apply to the architect in terms of their overall concept, but also the infrastructure team who are maybe tasked with some of the nitty-gritty details of making sure, do you meet this need, do you meet that need? Fantastic.
So if I take a step back and I'm an architect looking to implement messaging, what sort of things am I going to be interested in that data? Because I've touched on a couple, but you plan to some detail about what my main concerns would be.
Well, as an architect, you're probably not thinking about a specific application. You're maybe thinking about the overall solution that you're trying to maybe deliver, or you're trying to think about the entire way in which maybe some new implementation works with the rest of the infrastructure that's already in place. As such, messaging really should appeal to you in terms of almost a magic bullet that is able to cut through a lot of the complexity that otherwise you would need to consider in terms of saying, okay, we're going to meet a business need. We're going to implement a new application that maybe going to attract a new business opportunity, things like that. How are we going to do that? Oh, well, we certainly don't want to recreate, our customer relationship aspect. So we want to reach out to the existing customer database. We want to maybe pull in some of our existing inventory, things like that. So any new solution that I'm going to deliver actually has to have hooks into the rest of our existing infrastructure. Otherwise, we're going to slow down. We're going to recreate things. We're going to be mired in all sorts of things. What messaging allows you to do is have a single consistent interface between your existing infrastructure and also your newer infrastructure, so that not only can you hook together your existing stuff, but it makes it very quick and easy to say, okay, we have a new asset we're bringing to market. We want to address a new opportunity. We can leverage everything we've done today with a single consistent interface that brings actually the transactionality we want, the security we want, and also not only can we deliver that when we then throw it over the wall to the infrastructure team to manage, that they can assure us that, oh, no, it's fine. If there is a failure of a system or whatever, it's highly available. It can recover. It can make sure that it doesn't actually go down until somebody brings it up. It can fail over to another instance.
Oh, fantastic!
So there's a link there between one of the personalities is the developer, the other personality, the architect, and then even the third personality, which is the infrastructure team.
So in terms of then of that infrastructure, you've got your sysadmin. I'm guessing in that case, if you've got a dependable standard messaging infrastructure, that's going to make your life an awful lot easier in applying standards, making sure that you've got uptime which conforms to your business goals, and be able to plan things like outages for maintenance and recovery when you decide that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the people we talk to around messaging tend to sit either in the architect space or in the infrastructure team space, the system admins who are keeping the businesses running. And that's what they depend on their messaging system to do, is to keep their systems running. Now, in terms of some of those capabilities we talked about, maybe one of the things that they need most of all is reliability and availability, because they'll say, okay, we're now running systems in production, we're keeping the business running, we're keeping the systems running, but failures happen. I mean, if you look at what MQ specifically was addressing 20 years ago and what systems are today, there's been a huge step forward. But messaging is actually there from 20 years ago to today, because although I think we talked about this last time, failures occur maybe less frequently in terms of the network infrastructure not being as fragile, systems not being as fragile, maybe having more instances of applications running. Everything's there is better, but when you get a failure, you still get a failure.
True.
And from a messaging point of view, you're connecting probably more and more things together, and therefore, from a system and infrastructure point of view, you need your messaging system to be resilient, to say, okay, yeah, that's failed, but it's all right. We've failed over. We've got another instance here that's up. It's running. We haven't lost any data. Those persistent messages that we talked about just a few minutes ago from a developer point of view, they're available in our failed over instance. We can continue running with them. Nobody will notice that there was a failure. That's what a system admin wants, is their SLAs that they've signed up to in terms of availability of the infrastructure. By having the right messaging layer in place, they can meet their SLAs.
Fantastic. So, Leif, are you up for taking a few questions from Twitter?
Hey, far away.
Hang on. So let me get these fired up. Okay. Okay. So we've got a few in, which is great. We have got, okay, where do other messaging developers hang out? Is there a community or an infrastructure that you can join and engage to talk with other messaging developers?
Well, there's not one community. There's actually a number. Clearly, IBM Developer Works. There's a number of discussion forums and communities on Developer Works. There are external forums as well. A lot of skilled messaging people around MQ hang out on mqseries.net. Stack Overflow. There's a lot of people ask questions on Stack Overflow. If you're old school, there's a listserv. If you search for MQ listserv, there's an area where people can ask each other questions about MQ. There's a range of areas where you can interact. User groups as well. I mean, there's quite a lot of not just hanging around in cyberspace, but actually meeting up. You can go to events here and there, but each area tends to, certainly from an MQ point of view, there's a WebSphere user group where you can actually meet up around MQ discussions.
Sweet. Okay. The next one. Okay. So what sort of tooling am I going to need if I'm to implement and use messaging?
Okay, that's it. Probably we need to answer again in our three hats.
Yeah.
From an application developer point of view, clearly you're going to be using maybe your favorite tooling, your favorite ID to develop your applications. And as I think we covered last time, from a developer point of view, your messaging environment is probably, certainly from MQ point of view, is invoked by just binding with a set of client libraries.
Yeah.
So you can include MQ in that. The developer editions are free generally, so you can build your experience that way. tooling from an architecture or an infrastructure team is more around how do I see what's running? How do I know where my messages have gone? Who's using the system? What's the capacity of the system? We do ship some tools with MQ, both scripting and command line tools, but also a graphical tool called the MQ Explorer.
Yeah, sure.
That allows you to define and monitor what's happening. With our new product, the MQ Appliance, we've got a very cool new tool called the MQ Console.
Pretty awesome.
I believe there's a YouTube video of you demonstrating the MQ Console.
Yeah, with Matt Chapman and Mark Walters. They're awesome guys.
Maybe our audience should check that out. But also, there's a lot of third-party tools around MQ, certainly. I mean, one of the benefits of MQ is it's so widely used that it's actually supported by a number of both free and paid-for tools produced by third parties. And frankly, no one's going to say one size fits all. Right. From a tooling point of view, you always are going to say, well, it's not quite for me. I want something that's different. Luckily with MQ, there's a huge range of tools to fit almost anybody's needs.
Sweet. Okay, look for the next one. Okay, all right. So are there different types of messaging models that developers can use for their applications? I know that's a big question.
Yes. So if I'm a developer and I'm thinking, okay, I want to use messaging, you do actually have a choice. The traditional model that we've talked about is, it's point-to-point messaging. I have a message, I want to send it from my application to this other application.
Yeah.
That's very simple to consider. And it's what, I would imagine a lot of our users have done from an MQ point of view for many years. What we've actually seen a huge growth of, and it's actually quite a big subject, this, is publish subscribe. And so it's not I'm sending it to you, it's I'm sending it out there.
Yeah.
The way I would refer to it is point-to-point messaging is like email. If I'm emailing you, John, I get your email address, I send you an email. Publish subscribe is like Twitter. I'm just pushing it out there.
Yeah.
And if our viewers are subscribing to the hashtag ibmmessaging, then they're subscribing to it, but you don't know who's consuming it. So publish subscribe, point-to-point, huge discussion. Maybe subject of another
Part
talk.
3.
Part 3. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
So let's go. I know it's a big topic and it deserves a fair bit of attention. So yeah, why don't we do a part 3 for what is messaging, and we'll cover that.
Let's do part 3.
Genius. Okay, on to the next one. Let's have a look. The square window. Okay. So, will we have any more of these Hangouts coming down the pipe? We do. In fact, I'll do a quick screen share and I'll show you've got a community you can go to for the full list of Hangouts around messaging integration. I'll do that now. I'll also put a link into the video notes as well. It goes into YouTube. So, let me very quickly do that now. Let's do the screen. Share. And here we go. So this is my avatar self over here.
It's a very good likeness, John.
Thank you very much. I've got that lovely unshaven vandalized look about my face. Okay, and down here you can see we have got all of our up and coming posts for our Google Hangouts, and I'll put the link to this in our notes.
That's excellent.
Awesome. So I'll just quickly put that there. Messaging. And okay. Fantastic. Okay, so in that case, folks, thank you so much for joining us. Leif, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, sir. and watch out for the next in our What is Messaging series part 3. We've also got one coming up next week, so check the agenda, have a wee look. It'll be worth watching, listening to. Thank you very much indeed, folks. Take care and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.